All right, everyone. So this week I've been set a self-love challenge by a friend. My goodness, that can be one of the hardest things to do, but it's absolutely vital. I think one of my favourite passages of scripture is Jesus saying, "Love thy neighbour as thyself." And what I like about that is that it assumes that you love yourself already, right? That's like presumed, or it's part of the commandment. If you think about it, how can you really love and serve other people if you aren't already loving and serving yourself and taking care of yourself? Like they say on aeroplanes, you fit your own oxygen mask first before attempting to help others. Because taking care of yourself means surely that you're going to be stronger, healthier, more capable, more positive. And all of that is going to have a positive influence on everyone around you, your loved ones, your friends, your family, colleagues. And it's not selfish. It's so tempting to fall into thinking, it's selfish to put myself first. But taking care of yourself and so that you can be at your best isn't selfish, it's self-honouring. Do you really think that you were put on this earth to live in self-loathing? You're a beautiful creation and you're powerful. So why would you live one day as though you aren't? And I know that most of us are living that way. So what can you do? Okay, affirmations can be helpful. I've done lots of that in the past when I've really been low. You can treat yourself as long as it's not self-sabotaging. You could write a gratitude list. You could reward yourself by letting yourself have a rest, even if you think you haven't earned it. Those things can be great, but I think there's more to it than that. Because you could be fighting against the odds if you're stuck in the wrong mode. So I've gone and done some research into nervous system regulation, and it turns out that nervous system regulation has a huge impact on your capacity for self-love. It seems to be affecting everything, right? But if you're stuck in fight and flight, then your whole system is focused on one thing: keeping you safe. Find safety, survive. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's the bottom. It's the bottom rung of that, the lowest level of existence, which is just stay alive, right? Now, from a survival perspective, from an evolutionary perspective, that's great. It makes perfect sense. Our sympathetic nervous state is there for a very, very good reason, right? But it's also, if you're talking about selfish, it's inherently selfish. It's saying, look, I just have to make sure that I survive right now. Find shelter, find food, find warmth, whatever it is, just security. And it's all good. But when you're in that state, your stress hormones are elevated. And that means that the blood flow in your brain, this is known, provable physiological stuff, right? The blood in your brain is diverted away from expensive machinery that you don't need in your brain to the parts that are concerned with survival, like the amygdala, which raises your ability to detect fear and threat. The hypothalamus, which coordinates the stress response. There's also the basal ganglia and motor cortex, which gets you ready for action, movement. And there's sensory cortices that particularly your visual and hearing, so that you can scan for threats, right? So when you're under that sympathetic nervous system stress, right, it also affects your behaviour. So you're going to default to old patterns, familiar patterns. You're more likely to self-sabotage. You're more likely to believe fear-based thoughts. And you may also confuse coping mechanisms for self-care, because they're not necessarily the same thing. And that blood that's pushed to those kind of reptilian parts of your brain, right, are being diverted away from the prefrontal cortex, which is where you experience self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, compassion, morality, and having a long-term perspective. And all of that is related to your ability to love and care for yourself. So again, both of those modes are perfect. Both of them are part of being human. But the point is that you're not meant to live in fight and flight the entire damn time. That sympathetic nervous state. You are meant to spend the majority of your time not in stress, but free to contemplate what really matters and what's really true. When you're in fear, I love this description of fear. So, false expectations appearing real, right? You're meant to experience, fear is not a bad thing. The stress response is not a bad thing. The sympathetic nervous state is there for a damn good reason, right? It's that when there's a real threat that you definitely need to respond to, it helps you respond, right? You in action mode, everything's elevated, and it stops the healing process and all the other bits of your body, like the digestion, so everything slows down, all that stuff you don't need, everything, all your resources are poured into what it takes to survive, right? And that's great, but you're not meant to live in fear. And most of us, most of the time, are living in fear. False expectations appearing real. And it looks as though that the world that we live in appears to be set up to keep us unthinking, uncaring, in that fight and flight mode. But stress is not your natural state. It's bad for your body because it stops you from deep healing, right? Now let's say it's bad for your body to be in that state for extended periods because you're not healing, and also it's stunting your emotional and spiritual awareness. So if you choose, I'll pass this challenge on to you, if you choose to love yourself more, right, and to love more, then you have to take control over your nervous system regulation, and that means getting into the parasympathetic state for the majority of the time. So there's the things we've already mentioned, but there are things that we know that can help you achieve the parasympathetic dominance, like conscious breathing, breath work, chanting, humming, any spiritual practices, prayer, meditation. Cold water therapy will also do it. Even just splashing cold water onto your face can help that, right? You can lie and ground on the earth. Anything to do with mindfulness, right? Just gazing at something that's relaxing, like a candle. Spending time in nature, listening to birdsong, right? Physical touch. All of these things can help, and they are all worth making time for. But if you're fighting against a baseline of high stress, as most people are, then it's not clear how much impact these things are going to have, or how long you'll be able to maintain the parasympathetic dominance. Also, anyone who's experienced severe trauma could have an overly sensitive trigger to go into the sympathetic fight and flight mode. And then they'll have to do more to restore, to get back into the parasympathetic mode. But there is one thing that I know of that takes no time at all, and that forces your parasympathetic nervous system and your vagus nerve to activate, and it's this. It's mature hops extract. You squeeze it into a drink, and it sets your body into the parasympathetic state for between 8.5 and 9.5 hours. So it's magic. I think it's a miracle, because it doesn't only help you deal with past events that could still cause you stress, but it helps you with everyday stresses as well. I can promise you it has helped me to deal with what could have been a highly stressful situation, but where I was able to remain calm, know my mind, know my own power, and still accept everything and love myself. So if you are living your life in stress, the first thing I want to say is you are not meant to live that way. You have responsibility to yourself to turn that around. And this is the best tool that I've ever come across. Hands down. It's worked beautifully for me and for loads of other people that I've spoken to. And I'm not expecting you to trust me. I want you to trust yourself. Right? This stuff seems like a miracle, but as I always say, you are the miracle. Your innate ability to restore balance, homeostasis, to heal yourself, to balance your brainwaves, that's the miracle. So don't trust me, trust yourself. And what, for the cost of a cup of coffee a day, that's all it is. Just put yourself first so that you can be everything you were born to be. And if it takes being a bad consumer, a rebel, misfit, I don't care. Do you care? So do yourself a favour and try this. Experience what it's like for yourself. If you want to know more, just drop the word more in a comment and I'll get right back to you with all the info. Take care.